Welcome to this explainer, the currency of chaos, an economy without value. So I want you to imagine, just for a second, what would actually happen if the very concept of the United States dollar vanished overnight. I mean, literally poof, gone. Not just the physical paper in your wallet burning up, but the entire digital and psychological architecture of money just completely evaporating from our collective minds. Now, what if the dollar really did disappear tomorrow? It's a pretty profound thought experiment. What exactly happens when 330 million Americans wake up with absolutely zero cash, no functioning banking apps, and not even a single concept of price? We rely on this invisible system every single second of our waking lives to dictate, well, our choices, our time, and ultimately our survival. So what does the absolute 0 hour of a moneyless America actually look like?
Well, let's get right into part one, the day money vanishes, system freeze.
Okay, picture this sequence. You wake up, you're a bit groggy, and you just want your morning coffee. But then you realize money is entirely gone. Suddenly, you're forced to try and trade your highly specialized modern-day skills for that latte. And obviously, the transaction completely fails. This breakdown brilliantly illustrates how a simple morning coffee run would just completely collapse without a shared medium of exchange. I mean, think about it. Your local barista absolutely does not need a digital marketing consultation or 3 lines of Python code or, a legal brief drafted in exchange for a dark roast. The gears of daily life would just grind to an instant, jarring halt. And if you think the coffee shop scenario is rough, try explaining to your landlord that you're going to be paying this month's rent in mid-tier Excel spreadsheet optimizations. It's kind of funny to picture, but it really highlights the total absurdity of attempting a modern barter system in a highly specialized economy. We're just completely unequipped to directly trade our incredibly niche daily labor for actual physical shelter, sustenance, or utilities. Which brings us to part 2, the barter economy myth, fiction versus reality. So we really need to address this completely false assumption that a moneyless society automatically defaults to trading chickens for shoes. You know that story most of us learned in basic high school economics class? That people used to directly swap physical items, like a chicken for some shoes, until money was finally invented? Yeah, well, that's mostly fiction. Actually, counterintuitive anthropological research shows that pure barter economies practically never existed in human communities. It's a huge, pervasive myth. The reality is far more fascinating. Early communities actually relied on complex ledgers of social credit and debt to survive. Let's define this clearly, because this is the absolute bedrock of how humanity functioned without cash. A social credit ledger is a historically proven system where early societies tracked favors, debts, and trust instead of making those clumsy, direct item-for-item trades. So if you gave your neighbor a chicken today, you didn't demand their shoes right then and there. They just owed you one. The whole village kept this running, collective mental tally of who owed what to whom. It wasn't about physically swapping goods at all, it was this intricate psychological web of mutual trust and obligation. Let's look at part 3, the psychology of trust, the invisible grid. Because that local village ledger of favors, it never really went away. It just scaled up to a global level. Think about this staggering number for a second, $27 trillion. That represents the massive United States gross domestic product. To put that into perspective, that $27 trillion figure brilliantly illustrates the sheer volume of trust required to keep a system of this immense scale running without a physical anchor. Our money hasn't been backed by physical gold for decades. It is backed by absolute, unquestioning psychological belief. Literally all $27 trillion of that economic activity happens exclusively because 330 million people collectively wake up every single day and agree to hallucinate that the numbers glowing on their banking apps have real, tangible value. Crazy, right? So let's move to part 4, reinventing the dollar, building from scratch. Let's explore what history tells us about our psychological need to reinvent currency when a system entirely collapses. Back during the Great Depression in 1933, to stop massive bank runs, the US government declared a national bank holiday. The banks literally bolted their doors shut. Suddenly, regular Americans had absolutely no access to their cash. But did they revert back to trading chickens? No way. Towns completely bypassed barter by inventing temporary local scripts. We're talking alternative currencies like wooden coins, stamped metal pieces, or even IOUs written on clamshells just to survive. When the system vanished, the psychological urge to have a standard unit of measure was so incredibly strong that human beings immediately reinvented it out of thin air. But here's the thing, you can't just use any random object.
To understand why certain quirky things become money in a pinch, we have to look at 3 core criteria for successful replacement currency. First off, it has to be durable, meaning it won't just rot or fall apart in your hands. Second, it must be portable, so you can easily carry it around in your pocket. And third, it has to be divisible, so you can actually make change for smaller everyday transactions. If an object meets these 3 specific criteria, well, human psychology will readily adapt to accept it as money when the chips are down.
A fascinating modern-day example of this is the United States prison economy. When traditional US dollars are banned and completely removed from the environment, the system still fiercely demands a standard unit of account. Now, for decades, that currency was cigarettes. But after widespread smoking bans, the currency naturally shifted to something entirely unexpected: the Mac. Basically, pouches of mackerel bought at the commissary. Why macro? Well, because it perfectly fits those 3 criteria we just talked about. It's highly durable inside a sealed foil pouch, it's very portable, and it's easily divisible into smaller trade values. It flawlessly bridges the gap between a chaotic barter system and a structured, functioning microeconomy.
Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway of this entire explainer. I really want to leave you dwelling on this single thought. Is money a mathematical tool, or is it just a shared psychological illusion? Think about it. If everyday towns can invent a working economy out of clamshells during a banking crisis, and prisoners can build a highly functioning financial system out of pouches of mackerel, it fundamentally challenges what you might believe about the invisible structures running our daily lives. Money isn't some strict law of physics. It's a fragile, ongoing collective agreement. And maybe, just maybe, the true value of a dollar has very little to do with hard economics and absolutely everything to do with the simple fact that you and I believe in it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. It's been a truly fascinating journey.